Hey, what's going on, guys? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at this pretty awesome mini gaming PC that I recently picked up from AliExpress. These come in many different configurations, but the one I have here has a 9th gen i5 and a real GTX 1650. It's actually a low profile unit from MSI, and on paper, this actually looks like it could perform pretty well. I picked up a bare bones model, so it didn't come with storage or RAM because I already had some laying around, and I paid $580 for this tiny thing. Like I mentioned, these come in many different configurations. You can get them up to 64 gigabytes of RAM and up to an i9. The lowest end model they sell is an i3, but I chose the 9400F. And as you can see here, we do have a real GTX 1650 in here. This is the low profile MSI version. We also have the CPU cooler over here on that 9400F, and overall, the way they slammed everything in here looks pretty nice. This is tiny when you consider that it's a real gaming PC with a dedicated GPU and a desktop class CPU. Along with the PC, you're also going to receive some SATA cables. You got a stand so you can set this up vertically, your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antennas, and a 180 watt power supply. So I'm going to be throwing a 512 gigabyte NVMe SSD in here and 16 gigabytes of RAM running at 2667. This is the bare bones unit. I wanted to get out a bit cheaper and I already had the extra accessories laying around. But I gotta say, this looks pretty awesome, and if anybody out there knows where I can just buy this motherboard, please let me know in the comments below. Getting this up and running should be pretty simple. I'm going with a Kingston NVMe SSD. This is a 512 gigabyte drive. And right here, I also have some inexpensive Kingston RAM running at 2667. We have two 8 gig sticks, bringing it up to a total of 16 gigs in this unit. And if you don't want to go bare bones with one of these, you can get up to 64 gigabytes of RAM and 2 terabytes of M.2 storage in this from the factory. I will leave a few links in the description in case you're interested in taking a look at this. But I'm super excited about getting into testing, and I love the way this motherboard is laid out. We have that PCIe X16 slot over there on the side, making it really easy to put this in a small form factor case like this. The bottom cover here does have ventilation for that CPU and GPU, but in this video, I'm going to be running this in the vertical orientation. It does come with those stands, and I know it's going to stay a lot cooler in the vertical position, and that's how I'm going to have it set up on my desk anyway. On the front here, we have 3 full-size USB 2.0 ports. We also have our power button and an LED indicator. Moving around back here, we have our audio in and out, 4 USB 3.0 ports, gigabit Ethernet, our power in. This PC does include 2 smaller external Wi-Fi antennas. We also have a full-size display port, full-size HDMI, and DVI. When it comes to the specs of the model I chose here, for that CPU, we have the Intel i5 9400F, 6 cores, base clock of 2.9 GHz, and a turbo up to 4.1. The GPU is that low-profile MSI GTX 1650 with 4 GB of GDDR5, and I've installed 16 GB of DDR4 in this unit. Now it's time to get into some testing and see how this little thing performs. I'm going to be running Windows 10 Pro. It's going to take me a while to get everything installed up and running, but I do want to test out 9 to 10 games here. We're also going to run some benchmarks. Alright, so here we are. I've got Windows 10 Pro installed. I've been up and running for about 23 hours. Haven't run into any issues with this thing, no overheating or anything like that. It's actually been a little beast given its form factor. As you can see, we have that i5 9400F. 6 cores, unfortunately no extra threads, so we're stuck here with just those 6 cores. Still does a great job for gaming, we'll take a look at that in a second. 16 gigabytes of DDR4 running at 2667, and we have that NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1650. And as you saw, this is a dedicated low-profile MSI GPU in this mini PC here. Idle temps have been amazing. I mean, we're sitting at around 31. Temperatures across the board while gaming and even stressing this thing out have been way better than I thought they would, and by the end of this, I'll show you all those. But yeah, so far, been a really nice experience here. We do have that built-in Wi-Fi 5. It's not Wi-Fi 6. I kind of wish it was. But using something like this as your everyday desktop will work out just fine. Web browsing, super fast. We have great WebGL performance because it's using that GTX 1650. Go all the way up to 20,000 here, 20,000 on screen at 59 to 60. When we hit up 25,000, it does dip down a bit, but it's not bad at all. It does a great job with everything that I've thrown at it. But the first thing I want to take a look at are some benchmarks. First up, we have PC Mark 10 with a total score of 5,195. Moving over to Geekbench 5, single core 1079, multi 4627. So single core on this 9400F is looking pretty good, but multi-core is a bit down there when you compare it to higher core count CPUs. Moving over to some GPU benchmarks, 3D Mark Night Raid 29,679, Firestrike 8,502, and finally, Time Spy with a 3,752. So for a small form factor gaming PC, all of these benchmarks are looking pretty good, but now it's time to get into some real world gaming and see how this thing performs. First up, we have Injustice 2, 1080p, high settings. It's going to run at 60 all day, and I mean, that's what you want with fighting games, so yeah, this can definitely handle these type of games. And if you wanted to go with something like Street Fighter, you're going to be able to bump it up to Ultra. Forza Horizon 4, 1080p, ultra settings, I got an average of 73 FPS out of it, and if you just want to get a bit more out of it, you can drop some of these down to high, but overall it handles this game quite well. Call of Duty Warzone, 1080p with a medium-low mix here. We got an average of 77 FPS. I was actually pretty impressed with this. I do not have dynamic resolution going or anything like that. This is just set with a medium-low mix, and it's fully playable.
Cash can be used at buy stations to buy kill streaks and other special items. I'm hit! Grab some armor plates. Well done. The upper right part of your HUD shows how many enemies remain.
When it comes to The Witcher 3, I was really hoping we could get high settings out of this, but I did have to drop it down to medium. Either way you look at it, 1080p, medium settings, you can get an average of around 83 FPS. Doom Eternal did have a few issues when everything was set to high, so I had to drop some of these settings down to medium, but we got an average of 72 FPS. This little PC did an amazing job with GTA 5. Here we are at 1080p with a high normal mix. We got an average of 129 FPS, and I think we could bump this all up to high and just run a little over 60 or around 80. But overall, it does handle it well, as you can see. Here we have Fortnite, 1080p, high settings in performance mode. I actually forgot to turn performance mode off just to check out the DX11 performance. But with a setup like this, we averaged 187 FPS. Here's Cyberpunk 2077, 1080p, low settings with an 80% resolution scale. I got an average of 64 FPS, and I actually didn't expect it to run this well. I've tested this in the past on the GTX 1650 and other platforms. They've done some optimizations here, and it does run pretty decently, but you will get those dips under 60. And finally, I ran the built-in Red Dead 2 benchmark, 1080p with a medium-low mix. We got a minimum of 47, maximum of 85, and an average of 67. I did want to take a look at the CPU temps, given that this is such a small form factor PC, and in idle we're around 36, average gaming 68, which was much better than I thought, and in a 10-minute Cinebench test, we hit 81 degrees Celsius, so not bad at all. Another thing I always like to record is total system power consumption from the wall. I use a kilowatt meter. Idle, 27 watts. Average gaming, 148, and the maximum that I could get this to pull from the wall in my extreme test was 173 watts. So it's definitely not a low power consumption mini PC, and going into this I didn't expect it would be, given that we have a desktop CPU and a desktop GPU in this small thing. So overall, I'm really impressed with this tiny machine, and given PC part prices and especially GPU prices and availability right now, this actually isn't a bad deal if you're looking to go small form factor. With that desktop CPU and GPU, you can basically play anything at 1080p. There are some exceptions, like we saw Cyberpunk 2077. That's just one of those games that's really hard to run right now. But I do think this does an amazing job for its form factor. What I got going right now is Overwatch 1080p, high settings. I'm getting an average of 137 FPS out of it. Fully playable like this, and I think we could do Ultra with this and get over 60 with it. So I mean, if you're interested in taking a look at this or learning a little more about this mini PC, I will leave a few links in the description. I will have one more video coming up. I definitely want to test out some higher end emulation on this thing, and I got a good feeling we're basically going to be able to do anything we want with this little machine here, especially when it comes to emulation. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If there's anything else you want to see running on this, or if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And like always, thanks for watching.